Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties. Ulitin na lang natin ang ating introduction. Again, welcome to our breakout room for today. Social entrepreneurship and the gender perspective, finding its place in the broader social and solidarity economy spectrum. So today's session will be very, very interesting as dito nga sa ginagawa nating Philippine Social Entrepreneurship Summit, sinasabi natin na even the definition of social entrepreneurship is not very well known to the common Filipino. What more, we're gonna talk about, and what we're gonna learn today and talk about more is about the broader social and solidarity economy. It's even lesser known right now. To shed light on this topic will be Dr. Ben Quinones, and including the gender perspective in the broader SSE spectrum, we have Dr. Nathalie to discuss those main points. So let me introduce to you our guest speakers for today. Our first speaker is Dr. Ben Quinones. He is the founder of the Asian Solidarity Economy Council, or ASEC. He has been involved in designing the crop insurance system in the Philippines as economic specialist of the Interagency Committee for the Development of the Philippine Crop Insurance System, whose recommendation led to the creation of the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation. He designed the self-help group bank linkage program and supervised its implementation in India, Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines in partnership with agricultural banking institutions and agricultural cooperatives in his capacity as Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Rural and Agricultural Credit Association. He contributed to the capacity building of several NGO microfinance institutions in Asia, including the Philippines under the UNDP-funded Grameen Bank Replication Program, while serving as Regional Program Coordinator of the Asian and Pacific Development Center. In the last 5 years, he worked with Filipino social entrepreneurs in the field of organic farming, coconut syrup processing, and digitization of agricultural and fishery supply chains. Lastly, he founded the Asian Solidarity Economy Council to promote social solidarity economy in Asian countries. ASEC is part of the global SSE network of RIPESS, or Intercontinental Network for the Promotion of Social Solidarity Economy. So welcome and good afternoon, Dr. Ben.
Good afternoon, Mayan and Dr. Rodmark. Thank you for that introduction. Will you introduce now Dr. Nathalie?
Can you hear me?
Okay, so let me just proceed with my presentation. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. We are now in the process of promoting social entrepreneurship in the Philippines. But I just like to point out that the culture of entrepreneurship is the driver of industrial revolutions. We are now in the fourth stage of the industrial revolution. And it's one of the main reasons for the Western world to be in the forefront of the industrial revolutions, particularly during the first, second, and third industrial revolutions. And then by the third industrial revolution, countries like Japan, China, India, and other Asian countries have successfully transformed the industrial industries and economies. In 2016, China, Japan, and India held the third, fourth, and seventh rankings in the World Bank Index of National GDP as a share of global GDP. Now, in other words, in the fourth industrial revolution, it is the industries, the enterprises in Asia that's in the forefront of development. Next slide, please. Now, what is exciting in these times is the emerging culture of social entrepreneurship, particularly in Asia. Many emerging economies in Asia pursued industrialization as a means of generating employment, particularly for women, reducing poverty and reducing inequalities. Musumi Roy, author of The Asia's Role in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, said, the direction of the global economy depends largely on Asia, which holds both its biggest and the greatest share of highly educated young workers. The key ingredients for its success include government policies oriented towards economic and social openness, prioritizing investment in education, innovation, superior technology skills, and above all, enthusiastic partnerships with citizens in welcoming the technologies of the future. By all indications, Asia is and will continue to be a dominant force in ushering in the fourth industrial revolution. Many social solidarity enterprises today are offering solutions in overcoming poverty, social exclusion, particularly of women, the older adults, unemployed youth, and persons with disabilities with superior technological skills and the use of digital technology. A unique feature of the culture of social entrepreneurship in Asia is the involvement and oftentimes leading role of women as social entrepreneurs. Next slide, please. So the emerging paradigm of social solidarity economy. Social solidarity economy enterprises are not only offering solutions to a variety of socioeconomic problems confronting society, they also operate in accordance with the principles and values of the social solidarity economy or SSE, which is gaining traction globally as a driver for job creation and inclusive and sustainable development. Next slide. So, what is this social solidarity economy? Basically, let me just summarize. Social solidarity economy encompasses enterprises very much like the cooperatives, mutual aid societies, uh, these foundations. You have what is also called what we know as social enterprises and self-help groups in the informal sector. They are based on the principle of voluntary cooperation, mutual aid, democratic or participatory governance, autonomy, and independence. And they put primacy on people and planet, social purpose over capital instead of profit. In other words, their mission is either social or environmental in nature. Now, SSA entities, these are organizational enterprises, they aspire to long-term viability and sustainability and to the transition from the informal to the informal economy. And they operate in all sectors of the economy. They put into practice a set of values which are intrinsic to their functioning and consistent with care for people and planet, equality and fairness, interdependence, self-governance, transparency, and accountability, and the attainment of decent work and livelihoods. According to national circumstances, the ECC includes, I have already mentioned, cooperatives, associations, mutual societies, foundations, social enterprises, helper groups, and other entities. They operate in accordance with the values and principles of the SSE. Now, in order to relate the economy to the enterprise, I always use the analogy of the trees and the forest. The trees they comprise the forest, but the forest is greater than the sum of all trees that thrive on it. Now, the same thing, the trees is to the enterprise, the forest to the economy. The enterprises comprise the economy, but the economy is greater than the sum of all the enterprises that thrive or compose the economy. So, in other words, when you are a social enterprise, the economy that you are creating might be called social economy or solidarity economy if you are, for example, organized as a collective like cooperatives, mutual aid societies, and so forth. If you are a foundation, your contribution is to the social economy. That's why we call it social and solidarity economy. Next slide, please. Now, what is the role of social solidarity economy in accelerating progress towards sustainable development? As you know, the sustainable development was initiated by the United Nations. It was adopted by government member governments member states in 2015. Now, the UN Interagency Task Force on Social Solidarity Economy uh, shows concrete evidence from various parts of the world of the contribution of ECC in realizing the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, ECC fosters patterns of development that are inclusive, fair, and sustainable. Recent research has revealed that the impact of SSE is particularly significant in terms of employment. Job creation is one of the foremost impact of social enterprises or SSE enterprises. Provision of social services, women's empowerment, access to affordable finance, and local economic development. Next slide, please. It also provides an important means for promoting gender equality and tackling the growing divide between rich and poor. This issue will be elaborated by my colleague, Dr. Nathalie. And by blending socially inclusive and equitable practices with climate action and green economy, SSE is essential for just transition. Next slide, please. SSE provides important means of dealing with multiple contemporary crises, enabling recovery and building resilience, especially the advent of COVID-19. SSE entities have been in the forefront of providing social protection measures. SSE activity is expanding rapidly in sectors centered on the provision of social protection services. And SSE yields benefits associated not only with material aspects of poverty reduction and food security, social protection, but also other enabling conditions that widen people's choices. Next slide, please. So these are the activities of ASEC that has been presented yesterday by Rodmark. And I will not elaborate on this anymore, but what just like to point out is that in all of these activities, our partner Patamaba or the HomeNet Philippines, this is a women-led, women-managed organizations are in the forefront in these activities. So thank you very much. Over to you, Maan and Rodmark.
Thank you very much, Doc Ben. Um, that was a very interesting topic, and I have several questions to ask you already, but we'll reserve the questions later on. And for our audience who has questions or who have questions, please use our chat box, and we will get to your questions later. We'll have a little time for that later. So again, thank you very much, Dr. Ben. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker. And our next speaker is Dr. Nathalie Africa-Verceles, or Dr. Natsi. Dr. Nathalie Africa-Verceles is the director of the University of the Philippines Center for Women's and Gender Studies. She is a professor of the Department of Women and Development Studies, College of Social Work and Community Development, UP Diliman. Dr. Natsi has a Bachelor of Science honors in the economics degree from the University of London, and a BA in philosophy, an MA in Women and Development Studies, and a doctorate in social development, all from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Her research and extension work are in the areas of gender and development and gender and the economy. Dr. Natsi is a treasurer and a member of the Board of Trustees of the Likhaan Center for Women's Health, an organization focused on promoting the health and rights of women from marginalized communities. She is also chair of Bayi Incorporated and co-convener of the Asian Solidarity Economy Council Philippines Network. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Natsi.
Maraming salamat po. Can everyone hear me? Pwede
Clearly, Doc
magparamdam.
Natsi.
Yes.
Okay, sige. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be virtually here with all of you. If you can please share my slides po. Okay. So let's all delve into engendering SSE via a feminist social solidarity economy or feminist SSE approach, which requires the use of a gender perspective. We must always assert that a gender perspective be integrated in all development practices, and this holds true even in a people-centered humane economy such as the social solidarity economy, where women can still be discriminated against, marginalized, and subordinated. A gender perspective entails both an examination and transformation of unequal gender relations. It cannot be emphasized enough that our approach must also be intersectional, with an acute sensitivity to the needs and interests that arise from other subordinated identities, such as those based on class, race, ethnicity, ability or disability, religion, sexuality, etc., because these identities interact with and reinforce each other and affect life choices, chances, opportunities, and outcomes. The goal is not only for women to meet their practical gender needs, such as employment and income, but also their strategic gender interests of women's empowerment, gender justice, and gender equality. Next slide, please. This is my presentation outline. I begin by briefly introducing the gender perspective and discussing inequality, equality, equity, and justice. I then introduce the framework of feminist SSE as a pathway towards gender justice. I will go through women's economic empowerment, demonstrate, hindi po, please go back to my, my outline. Yan. I will go through women's economic empowerment, demonstrate how a feminist SSE can facilitate this, and discuss what I believe a truly feminist SSE should be. Next slide, please. Thank you. The gender perspective is both a conceptual approach and an intervention method. The gender perspective is used in two ways. First, to understand unequal gender relations wherein men are dominant and women are subordinate, and men have more power than women in the family, community, workplaces, and in other social institutions. Second, to transform unequal gender relations through interventions that promote women's empowerment, gender justice, and gender equality. Next slide, please. Let's take the tree as representing the social structure of gender inequality, which is comprised of assumptions, beliefs, and stereotypes about women and men, which result in unequal and unjust institutional practices, such as discrimination against women, their marginalization and subordination across various institutional sites. Now let's imagine the fruits on the trees as representing opportunities, and the person on the left of each diagram as a man, and the person on the right as a woman. The person on the right could also represent members of the LGBTQI community as sexual and gender minorities. Inequality. In the first panel, and my slide disappeared from the screen, Rodmark. I can only see you. Nawala po yung aking presentation. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Hello, Doc Nazi. Okay,
Yes,
we'll
Rodmark.
just, sorry for the technical glitch again. We're putting
Yeah.
up your slides.
Yes, thank you. Medyo nakakapanik. Ayan. So I'm now discussing the first panel labeled inequality. So it's clear from the diagram of the first panel that because the tree is skewed towards the left, there is unequal access to opportunities and the man has easier access. This depicts the current situation all over the world, as evident in the World Economic Forum's yearly Global Gender Gap Report, particularly in the areas of economic participation and opportunity and political empowerment. It is a fact that gender relations are hierarchical and men have more power and privileges than women. In the second panel, which represents equality with a question mark, we note how equally distributing tools and assistance, as represented by ladders of equal height, does not benefit the woman given her initial disadvantaged position. By not recognizing this, we could say that the intervention is, in effect, gender blind. In the third panel, which represents equity, women's disadvantaged position is addressed by an intervention that identifies and addresses the inequality, as represented by the higher ladder given to the woman. We could say that approaches such as this are gender responsive and are a significant advancement on gender blind approaches, which disregard or maintain gender-based discrimination and disadvantages. However, gender-responsive approaches remain limited in that they do not confront the underlying structure of inequality that produces the unequal power relations and outcomes between genders. You will note that the tree remains skewed to the left. Metaphorically, we could say that gender-responsive approaches are merely palliative because while they alleviate the symptoms of gender inequality, they are not curative because they do not address its underlying causes. Gender-based discrimination, marginalization, and subordination will persist unless we challenge and transform the unequal gender ideology that allocates more rights, status, privileges, and power to men than to women, and the institutional practices that ensue from this unequal gender ideology. In the fourth panel, which represents justice, you will see that the tree has been straightened, which then makes it appropriate to equally distribute tools and assistance. Interventions that aim to change the unequal gender structure are gender transformative. What is truly required is a transformation in the unequal gender structure of existing norms and values about gender, gender roles and stereotypes, institutional policies and practices that reproduce and reinforce male dominance and female subordination. The unequal gender structure results in the unequal access to, control over, and ownership of resources, the unequal gender division of labor, the discrimination, exclusion, and marginalization of women, and unequal power in decision making. Approaches from a gender transformative perspective explicitly challenge gender norms and the power asymmetries between genders. These require a critical examination of gender roles and the gender division of labor, the engagement of men and the promotion of positive masculinities, a redistribution of resources and opportunities to women, the advancement of the social, economic, and political empowerment of women, their full participation in decision making, as well as other practices that directly confront unequal power relations between women and men. We can utilize feminist SSE as a pathway towards gender justice. Let us also please not forget that SSE is about transforming all unequal structures that maintain and worsen poverty and inequality. This is not just about sexism, but also classism, ableism, ageism, ethnicism, heterosexism, etc. Next slide, please. According to the Philippine Commission on Women, women's economic empowerment entails access to and control over high-value productive resources such as information, credit, loans, or financial assistance, training, markets, technology, and increased control over the business environment. Decent jobs and humane working conditions while enjoying benefits from wealth-generating opportunities. Next slide, please. Women on their own views and perspectives. Increased access, no, previous slide pa po. Increased access, no, less, previous slide yan. Increased access to economic and or enterprise-related programs and services. Better support services for women's economic and enterprise endeavors. Next slide, please. Less constraints on women as a result of gender roles and expectations, all resulting in better incomes, expanded capabilities, and life opportunities. Next slide, please. Can a feminist SSE promote women's economic empowerment? The answer is yes. Additionally, it is not just women's economic empowerment that feminist social solidarity economics can promote, but also personal, social, and political empowerment. Next slide, please. Now, what is a feminist social solidarity economy? It is one that integrates feminist economics perspectives and social solidarity economy perspectives. Next slide, please. Feminist economics has noted how mainstream or orthodox or neoliberal economics disregards women's gendered realities. It aims to improve their economic condition. Feminist economics has flagged the blindness of mainstream economics to women's unpaid work in households and communities, gender stereotypes about work, and the unequal gender division of labor, wherein women bear the principal responsibility for all household tasks and childcare, and unequal power relations between women and men. Next slide, please. Additionally, neoliberal economics assumes a rational, atomistic, self-interested economic actor, which has an androcentric bias or is male-centered. It ignores intersectionality of identities, or that people are differentiated further on the basis of gender, class, race, ethnicity, religion, ability or disability, sexuality, etc. And that these identities interact and affect life chances, choices, opportunities, and outcomes. It prioritizes economic over social needs and ignores the environmental costs of economic growth. Next slide, please. Thus, a feminist social solidarity economy integrates or incorporates feminist perspectives on gender in the economy in the social solidarity economy and redresses or corrects women's adverse gender-specific experiences of mainstream economic processes. It is an economic framework that seeks to promote gender equality and social justice through the development of an alternative economic system. It is based on the principles of social solidarity, where individuals and communities work together to create a more equitable and sustainable economy that prioritizes the needs and well-being of marginalized sectors, particularly women and other oppressed groups. The feminist social solidarity economy places a strong emphasis on the role of women in shaping the economy and promoting gender justice. Next slide, please. Now, I will distinguish the neoliberal actor from the solidarity or the social solidarity actor. The neoliberal actor is rational, atomistic, self-interested, or individualistic, competitive, aggressive, which are considered masculine qualities. The social solidarity actor values and practices other-oriented behaviors such as empathy, altruism, nurturance, care, and concern for others, cooperation, reciprocity, mutuality, generosity, unity, and harmony, which are considered feminine qualities. Next slide, please. Therefore, the social solidarity economy is by its very nature feminine. But what is feminine is devalued, is the basis of women's subordination in society. Engendering the social solidarity economy is also about valuing and propagating the feminine, such as solidarity values and care work. Next slide, please. In my doctoral dissertation, where I did case studies of 3 women's economic organizations, I identified feminist social solidarity economy practices, which I will show in this slide and the succeeding 7 slides. Women are seen as capable, productive workers. There is inclusion within the organizations. The sense of inclusivity is apparent in the resources made available to all the women. A production center with equipment, training, marketing assistance, materials, loans, and cash advances. Next slide, please. The organizational culture is one that is compassionate and caring, mindful of the women's welfare and that of their families, where the members feel welcome and free to articulate their problems and needs, where their concerns are given value, where there is open communication between the leaders and the members, where there is solidarity, cooperation, trust, unity, mutual help and concern, closeness and camaraderie among the members. Next slide, please. The personal characteristics of the organization's leaders are also vital, as they are key in shaping organizational culture. These are kindness, commitment to helping the members, and readiness to render assistance, being welcoming, empathetic, patient, and non-discriminatory, being understanding about their situation as workers and mothers, being humane, compassionate, and responsive to the members' needs, being approachable about personal and financial difficulties, and openness to criticisms and suggestions. Next slide, please. These are the financial policies that have proven very beneficial to the women. Loans and cash advances for materials purchased and emergencies, easy credit at a low interest rate, Agdamayan Fund and the microfinance savings that can be drawn from for family emergencies, weekly salaries and payments paid once a week with no delay, overtime pay, 13th month pay, patronage refund and dividends, educational loans at low interest rates, immediate financial assistance for members who figure in accidents or are affected by natural calamities. I will emphasize the importance of loans, cash advances at the Mayan Fund, and financial assistance for emergencies because they ensure that the capital for the economic activity is not diverted. Next slide, please. As for programs and services, the women mentioned the following as integral: capability building in design, product development, business management, which includes costing, sales, marketing, bookkeeping, accounting, and budgeting, gender sensitivity, leadership, and organizing training. Next slide, please. The provision of marketing assistance was highlighted as very vital because it allows the women to concentrate on production and not concern themselves about finding markets for their products. Next slide, please. Solidarity among the members is cultivated and nurtured through regular meetings, general assemblies, celebrations, activities such as training and seminars, out-of-town trips, and attendance as an organization in barangay, municipal, and city events as they provide opportunities for bonding. Next slide, please. The principles of cooperatives and the organization's vision, mission, and goals are reinforced by the leaders in discussions with the members. Members are also visited and monitored by the leaders, which is important for members who live far away. Next slide, please. The unequal gender division of labor is based on the man as breadwinner and wife or woman as homemaker model, wherein women bear the principal responsibility of accomplishing all the reproductive and care work for their households. A feminist SSE counters the unequal gender division of labor through its support for women's income-generating activities, which, based on my research, can lead to a more equitable sharing of household tasks between women and men. Next slide, please. A feminist SSE is responsive to women's practical gender needs and strategic gender interests and is gender transformative. It meets women's practical gender need for a livelihood and other practical gender and familial needs such as education and emergency loans. Additionally, it strives to address women's strategic gender interests, namely, and again, women's empowerment, gender justice, and gender equality. It aims to transform unequal power relations between women and men. The material resources as well as the intangible resources such as group cooperation and solidarity provided are used as entry points to promote the strategic gender interests of women's empowerment, gender justice, and gender equality. Next slide, please. A feminist SSE is intersectional and inclusive. It addresses other systems of inequality based on class, race, ethnicity, disability, religion, SOGI, etc. Next slide, please. A feminist SSE very importantly addresses the issue of class because it is a mode of production which is comprised of forces of production and relations of production, premised on solidarity and cooperation, where the means of production are collectively owned. It averts the exploitative relations of production intrinsic in the capitalist mode of production and the material conditions that foster class differentiation and the contradictions and struggles between classes. Next slide, please. Given the socialization of women into other-oriented behavior, we can say that solidarity is organic in women and in their organizations. Thus, women must play leadership roles in the social solidarity economy. Next slide, please. I go to my recommendations. We should utilize an integrated approach to women's empowerment by including in SSE initiatives awareness raising on women's rights, capacity building on organizing, networking, lobbying, advocacy, social protection, occupational safety and health, etc. There must be critical consciousness raising through trainings and seminars on gender sensitivity, the gender and development approach to women's development, women's rights, not just as women, but also as workers, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and violence against women. It is this conscientization, which consists not only of critical awareness, but also action to challenge and dismantle oppressive gender, class, and other systems of oppression, that will make the social solidarity economy truly feminist. The social solidarity economy is a socio-economic order. And economics, or how we organize ourselves in order to meet our material needs, can be utilized for social transformation by changing consciousness, attitudes, behaviors, and practices. Next slide, please. Engendering SSE entails engendering the entire supply chain. Negotiations and decision-making within and between its segments must be conducted fairly, equitably, democratically, and transparently, unimpeded by hierarchies generated by gender, class, and other intersectional identities. Women must be able to fully participate in making and implementing decisions. Next slide, please. To facilitate the full participation of women workers in this economy, support for their reproductive work is imperative through arrangements made for childcare by enterprises, communities, the state, or through more equitable sharing of household tasks with men and boys in the family. Next slide, please. This is the care diamond. You will see from the diagram that care does not necessarily need to be individualized at the household level and can be community-based. The state can provide financial support for social enterprise initiatives that alleviate women's unpaid care work. These include not just daycare and healthcare, but also community-based laundry services, for instance, and many others. The market and the state can step in through daycare centers, in private enterprises, and publicly provided daycare centers and services. Next slide, please. The gender division of labor that is based on stereotypes and assumed facilities of women and men must be eliminated, allowing women and men to enter areas of work in the reproductive and productive spheres wherever they are so inclined. Reproductive work must be valued and not seen as inferior work. It is reproductive work that supports and sustains all the activities of the economy. Next slide, please. For justice at the intersection of gender and class, redistributive measures favorable to low-income women along the supply chain must be actualized. Investments can be channeled to low-income women's enterprises. The prices of production inputs can be lowered by SSE suppliers. And low-income women's products can be prioritized in distribution, marketing, sales, and consumption. With the assistance of SSE economy, SSE advocates and cooperators from the private, public, and social sectors. Last slide, please. Next slide, please. Almost at the end na po ako. During the 2013 RIPES meeting held in Manila, this declaration was approved. RIPES is a global network of continental networks committed to the promotion of social solidarity economy, which the Asian Solidarity Economy Council, or ASET, is part of. Dr. Inday Ofreneo, who I saw is in the audience right now, Dr. Ben Quinones, and I were active in this meeting, and Dean Inday and I were part of the discussions that led to this declaration in particular. I will just go through the key statements and proposals, and these are the key statements. Women are the majority of people in the SSE, strong pillars for changes in society, but still invisible. Women's rights must be ensured at every level, including reproductive rights and all other rights. A gender perspective on SSE must take into account and address the fact that women have multiple identities, realities, and power relations between ourselves and others. All changes require women's empowerment and involvement. SSE would be successful only if it is gender transformative. And these are the proposals, very quickly. Women must create and redefine women's leadership that is sustainable in SSE organizations and movements. Gender needs to be a key issue in SSE, and women must be given the recognition for the work that they do. Women and men need space to discuss and develop an SSE gender perspective within SSE local, national, and international networks. We need to bring up local contexts and share SSE women's experiences into discussions. And lastly, gender must be officially included in all RIPES meetings and platforms. Next slide, please. In summary, SSE must respond to both women's practical gender needs and strategic gender interests of women's empowerment, gender justice, and gender equality. It must be gender transformative. SSE calls for us to organize, mobilize, and network. Wherever we are, whatever we do, all of us can play a role in building and propagating a feminist social solidarity economy. Next slide po. Maraming salamat po and thank you very, very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Natsi. That was a very insightful, if not such an eye-opening talk that you discussed the gender perspective in the context of the SSE. Now, if you will allow me, Dr. Ben and Dr. Natsi, we will, if it's okay with you, we'll give a few minutes for some question and answer questions from our audience. So if the audience has any questions, please let us know. You can use the chat box or you can raise your hand. But I have a first question. I'll start with Dr. Natsi, but I also have some questions for Dr. Ben also. But I'll start with Dr. Natsi. Dr. Natsi, let's say I'm somebody who has an organization or I set up a business, I put up a business, and I hired majority of the workforce, women workers. Okay, does that make my organization gender transformative already?
Rodmark, first of all, I'd like to thank you for ensuring that the gender perspective is integrated in the PSES. I was very, very happy.
My
Yeah,
pleasure, Dr. Natsi.
and I know you were instrumental in this, so really our gratitude goes to you. And I know that you know the answer to your question, but I know it's for the benefit of the members of the audience. We do not measure the gender transformativeness, quote unquote, of an enterprise on the basis of how many women are there. So it's not just the presence of women, but more so the presence of gender transformative practices. And again, this entails the use of a gender perspective, which means that we must be aware of unequal gender relations and take action to transform this within the organization. Even if it's an organization comprised of all women, it does not necessarily mean that they are critically aware about gender issues. We know this, di ba, Rodmark? In fact, I
Definitely,
find
Dr.
that
Natsi.
yeah, I find that there are as many women as there are men that we must conscientize. So that would be a starting point for us to be gender transformative. So we must make them aware of unequal gender relations. This is manifested and cuts across all societal institutions, not just in the workplace, but also primarily nga in the families, di ba?
Yes.
Before we go on to larger society. Yeah. So they have to be aware. So in other words, kailangan ng gender analysis. And this has to come from them. The conscientization must involve the women themselves because they have to come to an understanding of their location in society, their condition and position on the basis of personal reflections and also shared reflections with each other. So it's a collective analysis, to be facilitated
Yes.
by somebody who is a feminist.
Yeah, I love that, no, that concept that before a woman comes into power, she must understand that power first and foremost. And I guess that goes for anybody in particular. I have a follow-up question, Dr. Natsi. Um, how would you say, because in your talk you discussed about all the systems about and the gender perspective being intersectional and inclusive, how do you think can we use the gender perspective with regards to the other marginalized groups in society? How can the gender perspective be used to help or be an example for helping the other marginalized areas in our country, not just in our country, but in society in general?
Mm-mm. Yeah, thank you, Rodmark. No, we could use the template of unequal gender relations as sort of emblematic of all other unequal social relations because all other social relations are also marked, by hierarchies, of relations of dominance and subordination. And this is not just on the basis of gender, di ba? Pwedeng class, ethnicity, religion, age, ability and disability. So I think we have to be constantly mindful, of unequal power relations in society, which affects, among many other things, access to and control and ownership of resources, participation in decision making, also the power to make decisions, etc. So, what also we should be further mindful about is not only that there are other systems of oppression or inequality, but that these systems intersect. Diba? Kaya nga, I kept on talking about the intersectionality approach in my
Yes.
presentation because these systems of oppression reinforce and interact with each other, which exacerbates the position of those who are subordinated on the basis of several identities, not just gender. You can be a woman who's low income, who's a lesbian, diba? Who's matanda ka, no old, no older person, or very young, or a Muslim, etc. So please, let's not look at systems of oppression as operating independently of each other because there are people who are affected by multiple intersecting systems of oppression.
Thank you very much, Dr. Natsi. Now, I have a question for Dr. Ben. Hello, Dr. Ben.
Hi,
With
Rodmark.
regards, yeah, with regards to what Dr. Natsi shared about the gender perspective and its importance in the social and solidarity economy, how do you think? Because when we talk about the Philippines and so the social and solidarity economy in particular, it seems that we're still lagging behind if we compared it with other countries who are much more advanced in taking up the causes of the SSE. How do you think can we use the gender perspective to further let everybody know how SSE can play in development work in our country?
Oh, that is a very profound question, Rodmark. Thank you for that. First and foremost, I'd like to say I thank Dr. Natsi for elaborating what is he uh, calls feminist social solidarity economy. And I'd like to just say that I'm very proud to have been an advisor of hers, when she was taking this doctoral on feminist SSE. Because one time she asked me, Kuya Ben, do you think there can be a feminist social solidarity economy? And I recall I told her that there are, the basic principles of ECC are feminist, like caring and sharing. This is feminist. Cooperation is feminist compared to competition. But she broadened that, She broadened that, and I would say that she is the leading advocate of feminist solidarity, social solidarity economy in the Philippines as well as in Asia. Yeah?
I
Because
agree,
her
Dr. Ben.
point of view is really very profound. Now, uh, your question is very strategic in the sense that this kind of perspective, needs to be advocated and uh, it should be taught, to all social enterprises. Because as pointed out by Dr. Natsi, it doesn't mean to say that when you have women in the ranks of power, that the enterprise is feminist in character. Because you see, the women's liberation movement of the West, yeah, it's not the same as what Dr. Natsi has been describing as feminist, SSE, caring, all these things, they are so masculine in their approach, the women's league. But it's different when you have the Asian, flavor of feminist social solidarity economy. Because if you look at, the in the past, our women were like that. But like what Dr. Natsi has mentioned, there are other forms of oppression that bound, the women. Yeah, and so this feminist character of the economy has not really become dominant. Yeah, so really to cut short, the answer, we really need to have, this kind of perspective. And in ASEC, we have this engendering SSE, meaning to say, really putting this gender perspective, in all that we are doing. So we have run this already And this is one thing that we can do within this National Governance Council of the roadmap, the SE development roadmap, because uh, really it's very important that we imbue, we develop, and nurture the perspective of the gender in all the social enterprises.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ben. Talking about the roadmap now, I have another question for you, Dr. Ben. How do you think, because as you mentioned in your talk, the if we talk about SE in comparison with the entire SSE agenda, so SE falls under SSE. How do you think can we use now? Because when we were talking this morning, you mentioned something that was quite true, no? Right now in the Philippines, more people, even if there's not much understanding yet, there's still a conflict in how to understand what social enterprises or social entrepreneurship is. But more people are aware of SE rather than the social and solidarity economy. How do you think can we use SEs to help everybody or more Filipinos understand the greater ecosystem of the social and solidarity economy?
Yeah, what I do really is to make an analogy because you see, it's easier for people if you have an analogy. I think easily understand the relationship between the trees and the forest, because that is very concrete. They know what a forest is. It's a theoretical construct. I mean, it's abstract. You cannot grasp it. In the price you can, but if you use the analogy of trees and the forest, immediately they can understand that, because they know what a forest is physically. Now, like I said, when you go down and talk to people and you ask them whether it is an organization or, just a project, and ask them what kind of economy will this project or enterprise lead to, they don't know that, because even in the literature, the perspective is more on the enterprise. Management is about enterprise, organization. It's not about economy. Economy is only for the economists. And when you study economics, it's all figures. Supply and demand, etc. There are no values that are being taught. That's why the engendering is quite important because it teaches values. I'm so glad, that Dr. Natsi has pointed out the personal values,
Yes.
that's needed, to transform society. It's on not only systems, not only about finance, about marketing and so forth systems. It's about the values. These are the things that need to be transformed. And so we need, the feminine values of caring, sharing, compassion, to transform the economy. Yeah, because these are the things that make us, develop mutual relationships that are beneficial to all kinds of people. So again, it's really a big challenge, like you said, to understand what is economy. Yeah, most people, they understand organization, enterprise, but not economy. Yeah. So the best really way really is to use the analogy, trees and the forest. Then they begin to understand. Begin to understand. Yung forest pala ay yung economy. Now in the forest, it's not only beneficial. Beings are there. There are also harmful, entities there. Same thing with economy. Not only there are entities that are not only beneficial, there are also entities that are harmful. So you need to really choose the kind of trees that you need in order to plant to create a new kind of forest. So that that forest will be beneficial. Very much like just to give you a good example, very much like the forest, the community forest in Nepal. Yeah, this is cultured forest that I have seen for the first time, because it's the people who really develop and then nurture the forest. They are there, yeah, they are part of the forest, and they grow the forest. So because people have integrated themselves into the ecosystem of the forest, that forest becomes the economy in itself, you know. So because it's an economy that benefits the people, they take care of it, you know, they minimize the harmful, aspects of the forest. They see to it that it's beneficial. At the same time, they protect the forest to such an extent that the forest grows. Yeah, the forest grows. So this is one thing that is really a big challenge for us, and that's why is you can make analogies like trees and forest and many other things, you know, that could easily be understood by people.
Yeah, thank you very much for making that very clear, Dr. Ben. I think we don't have any other questions, or for that matter, maybe if I can ask the two of you, Dr. Ben and Dr. Natsi, for your, if you want to leave last words for our audience, if you want to say, if you want to share your last few words for our audience, maybe we can start with Dr. Natsi. Dr. Natsi, do you want to have any last words for our audience?
Yes. I hope that I was received with both open hearts and open minds. I know that when people hear the word feminist, sometimes no, they probably think it's something negative. No, but I hope that through my presentation, I was able to convince you that feminism really is something that entails simply a fight against all systems of discrimination, oppression, and subordination, and that we will be mindful that um, feminist the feminist perspective is essential, not just in the SSE, but as we go through life, no, in general. Kasi we always need to fight for justice and equality. Thank you po.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nazi. If there was anything with regards to your talk, it was such an eye opener. In fact, I think it would have resonated very well with our audience. Um, uh, for myself, I just realized how much ignorant I am about so many things, and that I still need to do a lot of work to come to a better understanding, not just of the gender perspective, but even on the social and solidarity economy principles and philosophies, and how we can use feminism and the gender perspective in helping us further advocate for these philosophies. So thank you very much, Dr. Natsi. Dr. Ben, do you have any last reminders or words for our audience?
Yes, thank you, Rodmark. I would just like to encourage those who would like to know more about SSE that ASEC has an ongoing training. It's about right now about to end, but we're conducting this. We would like to conduct this on a regular basis. And so, if you are interested to know about SSE, we can run this course for you. Also, another course is engendering SSE. This is, embedding the feminist philosophy or feminist perspective into the SSE practices. So these two courses are regular courses that we run, but it's for our partners for the sake, of our roadmap, social entrepreneurship roadmap. We can offer this in partnership with the council, our council of sectoral councils. Thank you, Rodmark.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ben. And for our audience, I'm not sure if you know that our speakers are rock stars in the SSE and the feminism movement world. No, and they're really rock stars. And we're so honored to have you, Dr. Ben and Dr. Natsi. Now, maybe a few reminders. If you want to know more about the Asian Solidarity Economy Council and the work that they do, you can visit their website. It's at www.asec.-sse.com. Again, that's www.asec-sse.com. And you can also check out their virtual booth here in Habilo. They have a virtual booth here, so please check that out. And also, if you want to know more about the University of the Philippines Center for Women's and Gender Studies, please visit their website. It's at
cws.up.edu.ph. Again, that's cws.up.edu.ph. And you can follow their Facebook page at www.facebook.com /UPCWGS. So thank you very much once again. I hope everybody enjoyed that session, and I hope everybody got to learn at least a little bit more about what social solidarity economy is and the importance of gender perspective.